course, we all know why. Carol from OvoPay tells us that she's looking at this as a $10 trillion market. And I think many of us are very excited about the fact that if designed well, and that's a big if, it can have transformative effects on families and communities. And we saw that in the case of Afghanistan this morning. I just came back from Haiti and saw the same, the power of using electronic money could really be helpful even in a post-disaster context. So Jan, I think, set it up for us well today, telling us that we have to be mindful of the users and make sure that whatever we're developing is really appropriate for the context and priced right, it's reliable, it's convenient, it really works for the tools that they have for us. And then other speakers were able to challenge us and remind us that this isn't easy. We've seen the perfect storm in Kenya, and there are business model, operational issues that have to be overcome if we're going to see other such examples. So the breakout sessions were hopefully a great way to dive deeper into some of the big questions on the table. How do we make sure that the remittance market is really taken advantage of to hopefully help scale other money platforms? Or how do we leverage the interest in food security for the purposes of money? How do we make sure that these are transparent and competitive markets, and so that we are seeing services that are increasingly reaching poorer households and with better products? So we've got a great panel here today, and I will just ask everyone if they could summarize maybe the one or two most interesting points from your breakout sessions. And because we want to make sure we've got time for question and answer session, we'll go straight to Q&A. So we have some mics set up on either side of the room, so if you have a question, go ahead and meander over that way, and we'll just dive right into questions after the quick summaries from the speakers. So I'll just start at the far end, and we'll make our way over.
Spend some time talking about what MVIA does. We are a cross-border mobile money transfer company operating today between the U.S. and Latin America. We use retail points of sale as load agents in the U.S. for the mobile wallet, and then we've built an extensive agent network in the Americas. We had a fair amount not a fair amount, but several questions at the end were about carrier dependencies for what we do. In our particular case, we don't integrate directly with carriers, but what the potential issues and gotchas could be with what the carriers are doing to protect their turf, so to speak, over time. Interoperability issues across carriers today. There are generally no interoperability issues because there is no interoperability across carriers in the mobile money space. So sorry, but I think that's going to be a really big issue. But again, that's not what we're about. We're really trying to facilitate financial inclusion via cross-border money transfer and leverage the $100 billion or so that originates in the U.S. to other countries to incentivize the individuals to become part of the financial system, as opposed to just dealing with cash as part of the remittance.
And in the scaling microfinance track, I'm Ben Lyon, by the way. We covered two parts, and I'll let Raul handle the second. But the first was to really step back and really reassess at a high level why is mobile money relevant in microfinance, and what role does it have to play in the value chain? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? And a lot of the challenges really are, it's multifaceted. It comes from a lot of the mobile money providers are nascent. Again, Kenya, Safaricom, and M-Pesa is the exception, not the norm. And as these new providers, now over 160 of them globally, continue to expand their markets and more enter into each country and start providing more extensive services, whether or not their agents are going to have sufficient liquidity to manage the needs of the microfinance institutions, whether or not the microfinance institutions have the IT capacity or personnel kind of know-how to do the integration with the mobile money system in order to really leverage the process, whether or not there's buy-in from the end user who's going to have to really understand the value proposition in a very tangible way, away from abstract concepts like opportunity costs. A lot of those are really unknown, and we're still looking for more best practices in the mobile microfinance industry, but there is intense competition and there will be quite a few developments in the coming years.
Hi, I'm Bart Stidham. I spoke on sort of transparency and security. We had quite a lot of security questions, and I also spoke a little bit on regulation in trying to do a little bit of level setting, which is to say if you're against anti-competitive practices and against big monopolies, then you're probably pro-regulation for a lot of this. But there were quite a lot of security questions. I think that's an area that's starting to become wide open, unfortunately. Last week we saw the first big bad security breach within the Android system where an application that was free on their store was downloaded somewhere between 1.6 and 4.5 million times, and it was supposedly to let you install nice background screens. And in fact, what it was doing behind the scenes was capturing all of your traffic on your phone, including your logins and your passwords. So, you know, as mobile phones become more pervasive, we're also very likely to see organized crime moving into this area, and it's just something we need to be aware of and guard against. So.
Hi, Raul Hinojosa. In the scaling microfinance panel, we gave the example of a technology company, TransferCell, that we've created and now deployed in what we're calling a deep transnational ecosystem. How do you start from transnational remittances from undocumented, unbanked populations in the United States to rural communities in Mexico, with the purpose of not only those customers in mind, but also the partnership for microfinance and credit unions on both sides of the border. How do you, and in order to do that, we had to describe that we had to create a new type of processing platform that we work directly with major banks on both sides of the border in order to facilitate low-cost transfers from prepaid debit card platforms to prepaid debit card platforms, and then using cell phones to cell phones to be able to do that. And on that basis, creating a peer-to-peer both loading as well as payment system that microfinance institutions can then, throughout the developing world, tap into this huge diaspora families on the U.S. side, as well as have very low-cost transactional capabilities in even the most rural areas through cell phones. The key issue is how do you create a platform that really can both leverage the existing infrastructure of banks in a very low-cost way? How do you break open the access to this very low-cost payment systems, but make it accessible to anybody with a cell phone, even in the most rural communities, to be able to have a next generation of financial services provided at very low cost in a ubiquitous fashion. So this is, we talked about the experience of what we call Oaxaca, California, which is this new reality between California and Oaxaca, where it's been implemented, and how we're now beginning to do it in various other countries in the Western Hemisphere.
Thank you. My name is Maneksha Genser, and I run a consulting firm called MPay Connect. I used to run PayPal's mobile business development efforts for North America prior to starting my consulting firm. I ran the presentation on food security, and one of the things that we discussed was the fact that mobile money, while we talk about it in the context of money itself and the needs for remittances, et cetera, we also believe that there's going to be industries that have the need, that are going to actually define that need to bring mobile money into various markets. Food security and agriculture is one of them. 70% of the base of the pyramid earns their income from the food supply chain. That's 2.5 billion people, and they are predominantly unbanked and don't have access to financial services such as microinsurance for small and medium farm holders. That in turn leads to, when there's drought conditions, for instance, or other sustainable issues, crop outputs go down, and these farmers, recognizing that that could happen, do not invest in proper fertilizer and seeds for their farms. That in turn leads to further crops going down. So you change that bad cycle by enabling something like mobile microinsurance. Syngenta Foundation launched their first program in February 2010, and within 2 to 3 months have gotten 11,000 farm holders with microinsurance. They use 2D barcodes on the mobile, on the sacks of the seeds to be able to send in the microinsurance. This then frees them up to be able to invest in their farms and hopefully increase crop outputs, then leads to them being able to make enough money to buy food for their houses. So this is an example of disruptive innovation that can really change the cycle of bad cycle in food security. And in addition, they have put up solar-powered weather vanes that will do automatic claims outputs. So if there's not enough sun or rain, these weather detection areas will know that, and they'll do automatic payments out to M-Pesa. It's a fantastic use case. I would welcome you to take a look at it online. They have a YouTube. And in addition, I highlight things like this on my LinkedIn group, Mobile Payments Series -MPay Connect, and I welcome everybody to continue this conversation. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So hopefully people are going to make their way to the mics here because we have our previous speakers and this panelist here. But I'll start off with one question, and hopefully we will get some others. I guess, you know, it's interesting from my perspective to hear different ways we're trying to think about the starting or opening up an M-Payments platform, whether it's on the backs of a remittance channel or through food security. Kabir talked about how the demand for healthcare might be the thing that unlocks something like this. So experimentation is needed. We need to really think about different payments and payment streams and so forth. And yet on the other side, we've got this question about safety. And I guess maybe starting with Bart, how do you think about balancing experimentation with safety so that we can keep going and foster the innovation without putting everyone at risk?
I think that's a very good question. You know, if too much regulation and you'll never benefit consumers,